Now, that's okay. Check. Good evening. Working on the audio. The time is now 5:30. We'll call this committee as a whole together August 25th. We'll begin with the invocation by Council Control, followed by the pledge of allegiance.
Lord, with your very words did you create all that is. By your very written word, do you guide us today? By your very word made flesh, did you redeem us according to your plan? By the very breath that you have, do you lead us through the Holy Spirit? Make the words that we utter tonight be worthy of that high standard, Lord. Pray that you would watch over us and keep us, bless us. In the name of Christ we pray, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that's a little better. First up, we have approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Mr. Carroll, second. I'm sorry. Motion by Mr. Rankin, second by Ms. Clark. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 7-0. All right, we're going to move into continuance of the review of ordinance 926. We got a good ways through the meat and potatoes last time, and now we're going to delve into the appendices that's been prepared by staff. So you have the packet from last week, page 37, the last page of guts, and then we will move into it's page 1 is the next one. That's page 38. Everybody with us? All right. We'll finish through this, and then we'll go back and go over. All right. Last week we asked for staff to get back to this. All right. In chapter 18, Ms. Morgan, do you have any highlights to give us on that?
Appendix A, the first page.
On chapter 18 environment. It's the right out of the ordinance in our packet.
Well, after the we did the last part of the subdivision ordinance, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's appendix A.
Okay. That's going to be titled as such.
Correct. And this is the appendix to the subdivision ordinance with the design standards. Right? I do not have anything to add. If y'all have any questions.
Questions from Ms. Fargo on section 18 about the environment. Addresses the open space standards there are.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the appendix A, the design standards for the major subdivision. We can go through that.
I was just going over the packet that was given to us. So this other big section that was in there, this is printed right off of the one that was sent to us in PDF.
Yes.
That was next in line for us. Keep us in order.
Thought we were going to do the second half of subdivision ordinance. Appendix A, and then.
We can jump to that.
Yeah, the chapter 18, we weren't prepared to review. We had put those in there so y'all can refer to them because the subdivision ordinance refers to them. But we haven't actually reviewed those for review for the council. So the open space, the screening buffers.
We'll come back to that. You want to stay on appendix A?
Correct.
We're looking for this page right here. So heavy stack for it. One. It says appendix A, make something in standards.
So just, what we did in this is we pulled out of the subdivision ordinance, we pulled out all the design features so that this could kind of rest on its own. It's a guide for once they go ahead and submit their application and they start designing their plan, the construction plan, or preliminary plat, that they can have this as a guideline of everything that they're gonna need. So this kind of follows the checklist that we made up also for the development.
Any questions on true appendix A? Make subdivision lot things. You can go by page, or that hills, whatever is best for council. So,
I'm just, if you know, what we have required for land use screening, when we using these particular terms, we gotta have a land use ordinance, or if we just, this is just gonna be included without, what is this saying? That's like number 4. You know, what you saying, land use ordinance. I don't know what we saying.
Still under the environmental. I'm sorry, that's still under the environmental chapter 18. That's the appendix 18A.
back here.
Yes. And that's something else we haven't reviewed with staff yet either.
We're gonna go over it.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna get
I
there.
put it in somewhere.
So that references then, I guess, wherever all it is referenced in here, that's it, you're in it right now. That's what's referenced.
Oh, that's what it represents.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But to answer your question, Ms. Henderson, it's based on the existing land uses that are surrounding the proposed development site.
Okay,
So it's taken into consideration what is already there,
all right.
as far as what kind of land use buffers they're gonna have to provide for screening if they have to provide them.
Thank you much.
But we haven't reviewed that with staff yet to, nail that down for each other thing. So.
Thank you.
I have a question on the parking space, page 7, 8, and 9. All straight for the residential makes perfect sense. I am curious, mainly on the industrial side, on where the numbers came
Okay, the number of parking spaces. These all came, everything for the parking space dimensions. Let's see, and the ADA parking, the parking space dimensions came from Berkeley County, South Carolina, and the ADA. The ADA parking came from ADA and Kershaw County. The loading areas information came from Greenville County.
what's concerned.
Number of parking spaces came from Kershaw County.
voiced this concern before. So, prime example is industrial ones. How will somebody building an industrial building know to look in the subdivision ordinance for the number of parking spaces they need?
Well, most people building an industrial space would rely on their engineering and architectural design professionals to determine that, who will then correspond with our departments here to cross-reference to make sure they're not missing anything in the subdivision requirements. Most engineers and developers do a great job of doing that. But typically, most of these requirements fall in the scope of ADA and what's required, which they'll also work on their architectural design.
So they need a variance, they're gonna request that.
Correct, and to even fathom a variance, that would be an interesting concept, because again, most of it would be relying on ADA requirements. There wouldn't be much variance there.
Actually, some of our large industry, some of their parking space requirement would be established, given their rooftop. But these are in line with other relative counties or counties.
Yes, let's see, Kershaw. EDA and Berkeley County.
Also, I do know at the top of this, it's, it references mixed use developments. And then letter I, page 11 of 5, it restricts the time in which waste collection can transpire. Is that just for a mixed use subdivision, or will that be applied countywide to every business in the county?
That would be everywhere. I can see where you're going with this. The concern when this came about, and this is actually from Greenville County, the concern when this came about was collection of trash adjacent to single-family residentially zoned areas to control the amount of noise and the location of where the dumpsters are.
Like, I don't necessarily have a problem with the time or anything. I was just curious if that was gonna be applied countywide when we approved this, or if that was just for these mixed use elements that we made. We don't have any to my knowledge, but we made when they have.
The countywide.
For penalty if they disobey that.
We haven't assessed any kind of penalties or enforcement project on what it work like it. It's just the framework of the legislative piece. But again, and we would also probably need to reference the county attorney. Clear this up, but if there's any type of ordinance that would need to refer to either contradict any ordinance that's already on the book. You need to reference that in this section.
As far as screening requirements, I assume that would be anybody further to bring about it.
And it would be kind of more of a code violation. Uniform code violation standards that are out there now. The non-custodial ticket where you could be fined for violations up to $200 per day.
Okay. All right. Questions? I'll skip over any section if somebody's got a question about a particular section.
I'm still questioning in my mind a little bit about vehicles. I visited one of those today before, and we just talked about it. I just remember, I know two cars per yard, sometimes it's just not enough. Sometimes I'm looking like there's 3 or 4 cars in the yard. I guess when you get teenagers, I guess you start having more cars in the yard. And I was wondering if there's gonna be another little place, another area where you can have some extra parking. Only because I've seen it, so it was just almost, you can't even go down the street because cars are parked so tightly.
Yes, ma'am, a lot of these subdivisions build in like common space parking and things like that to alleviate those issues. But again, that would be under the purview of the council, and what you want in that ordinance, what your vision looks like. These are staff suggestions based on, things we picked and gathered from other, neighboring counties, those other counties. But if you were to say, hey, we need more space per house and 2 cars, because in case they have a child, they want to add a 3rd car. That would strictly be under, your suggestion.
A lot of that's gonna fall in the HOA, because I've been in, I think one specifically in Lexington, where they allow no on-street parking. So no cars at all parked in there, boats can be in the driveway, they have to be in the garage. So like, some of that's gonna fall into the HOA more than just requirements, because you're not gonna have the staff to go drive around and see if people are parking in the driveways.
I know I've seen a lot of clutter.
Yes, ma'am, and that's one of the main concerns in addressing this, is that public health and safety concern. So if we have to get a fire apparatus or something like that to navigate, or school buses or any of those types of things, we would have to make sure that space is built.
Right.
If you want to do any changes to that standards in there.
I want us to be aware of it, I really do, because I just observed that myself, and I felt like it was.
So I don't know, and this is gonna be a question for Mr. Cruikshank. Can we require people not to park in the road? Where does that fall? We could require them to build more driveway space, that's doable, but.
Yeah, and I think the paragraph right above that on residential use talks about a pretty good sized driveway and a garage. Although most people without a garage, it ends up being a place to store junk. And you can't get your car in there, so. But it does have a good provision for pretty wide thing. As far as if it is a county road, we certainly would have jurisdiction on that. If it's inside the HOA or inside the development, depending on who owns the road.
I really just want us to be conscious of that. I don't know what we can do about it, but just be a little bit conscious of it.
25 foot
Buses need to
driveway.
go down, sometimes buses and also other modes of transportation and ambulance and anything where that, it be that tight. That's all I'm thinking about, it's just the tightness of it. Thank you.
You do not require builders to minimum 4, enough room to park 4 cars.
I think that's a great question, and even if you require garage space, it's only as good as the people that follow the rules, right? So if we limit it to 2 cars or 2 plus 2 space in a garage, we can put whatever we want to in the ordinance, but then you have to question the enforceability and the way people are going to operate under the ordinance once it's enacted. So it really is at the discretion of this council what you'd like to be in there, what your vision is. And then, but I would caution and take in concern the enforceability of once you put that into policy, and who's going to ride. Is there a fine associated with it? But I think ultimately, like the chairman just kind of emphasized, that there's an HOA, homeowners association, established within that community that would be the authority to go through and alleviate those concerns.
That's what we need to.
Yes, ma'am.
So under K landscaping, if that's where we are, correct?
Okay,
So item 3 says street landscape buffer strip residential subdivision. It defines a street buffer strip as a parcel of land adjacent to a county or state street or property line of a platted residential subdivision. So potentially there are 4 areas, right? That it could be in a plat, touches 4 different things. So in this, is that stating that there has to be a buffer on every side of the subdivision?
If it's adjacent to a right of way, yes. The street landscape buffer strip is for what is the areas that are located adjacent to a right of way.
Correct. It says adjacent to a county/state street or property line of a platted residential subdivision. Those are 2 different animals, correct?
You're correct, yeah, that would, as it reads. We are gonna be requiring land use buffers, but this isn't, that's what you're saying, this isn't the same thing. So the land use buffers would be more around the perimeter of the property line.
Yeah, I just want to make sure if we're talking about the street landscape buffer, this is actually saying the street or the property line of a platted subdivision, which could be any of the sides that may be against a forest or a wetland or another industry or subdivision.
Somebody had asked me to add that, and I don't remember who it was.
I think it's important to have that or to have some guidance on what has to be on different things against what type of other properties. I just don't know
It's right here.
there because then it's saying basically what we read here as the requirement is the requirement on all 4 sides.
Yeah, I think it would be a either or a combination of such, so we have a list of what's acceptable. And it has to be within a certain number of those, so let's say you have an A, B, C, and D, it could be A plus B plus C, and exclude D or all of the above or what have you, but I agree with what you're saying.
Are we gonna have something in this document that outlines?
I think we have the framework within this, and we can tweak it as needed to accommodate that, but I see exactly what you're saying.
I think if you take the or out and just say and.
Or do we strike it out?
That's essentially what you're getting to is that if there's an adjacent, if there's not a road adjacent to a particular property line, you're still saying you gotta have a buffer.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I understand completely. It's just, it's under street landscape buffer strip. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about
For the
property line.
Yeah,
So we need to strike
We need,
out this section, property line, or we need to strike everywhere it says street,
yeah, the property line.
refer to the property line.
somewhere identify different requirements for different things, because there might not be a reason to add this 30-foot buffer strip or anything if it's next to a forest or a national forest, and nothing could ever be built on or something.
And that's what our land use buffers are gonna address, yeah.
Thank you.
Just the property line for this section, there's more in it than some packet. Just for this section.
Under K, landscaping, number 1, where it says the developer shall make every effort to preserve as many trees as possible and remove only those trees necessary for the development of the lot. I thought I was looking through something earlier, not this document, but it had a little more language about the trees. Can you correct me to that? Or is this it?
That is actually probably under the open space, the natural open space section.
Just for reference, while I'm looking at this, I know we still work on grammar, but these headers, letters, they could have a line on page 18.
Yeah, we'll clean all this up. This is just a working copy. You have it from it. We're also going to take all the red out of it, make it all.
Addresses to, says in here, maintained by the developer / HOA. HOA does exist, the developer don't maintain it, or hold them accountable, is that the plan?
You have options there as the council, and again, I'd attach it to consider the enforceability of it, or you're gonna put that on the individual homeowner, you put it on the developer. And think about that long term, and what that looks like.
Typically, that's included as a statement on the final plat.
Are we requiring the berm, or is that a recommendation?
Recommendation. Option,
Highly suggestible.
I'm sorry.
Highly suggestible.
Yeah.
Roy, do you have a question? Come on.
Page. Flag lots. I know you guys do.
I have a page number. Go backwards. Give me a page number.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3.
Page 3 in this section we're looking at.
It's on the bottom. I know the issue with land choice. My question is it in the proper area? It's actually in major subdivisions. We don't have major subdivisions at flag lots. Flag lots are usually, owned by either individuals or somebody's gonna split up 1 or 2 lots. So if it's in the major subdivision, and they start looking through this, they're gonna say, well, this doesn't apply to me, because I'm not building a major subdivision, therefore I can do whatever I want.
What, on one you've seen before, what kind of house count are we talking?
2, 3. So it should be in like maybe just a generalized area on what we do with lots, if we have a generalized area. I'm not looking at that.
So we could leave it here and also put the same language in the minor subdivision section. Maybe.
Or if you want to reference it somewhere else, you want to reference, say, definitions.
Because this,
I think it is referred to in the general body of the subdivision ordinance.
I know it's under, I know it's under definitions. But then it goes into specifics here.
I agree with Mr. Boyer on that, it's probably misplaced. I think it is in. I swear, but I think it is in, if not, it needs to be, I think it was in the section on family vision.
We used to have just a general section, not one, I don't have all of it.
Yeah,
definitely look at that, especially if it's,
I just moved it over into the main body of it, because it really doesn't fit for major subdivisions. Criteria that they have.
Thank you. That's all.
all right, so
This is difficult, as I know Mr. Royer, mentioned that, you know, concerned about this. The reason it's under this section is it's under access. So this was just included as if you're addressing access on flag lots. I spoke to Sandy about this, our attorney, and mentioned Mr. Royer's concern. And looking through our code, I couldn't see where to put it. I couldn't see the best place to put it. So I would be open to any suggestions.
I just think it's out of place in major subdivision, it needs to be somewhere else in the ordinance. I don't have a problem with terminology and the language.
the next draft, we can work on that.
Yeah, the width and all that is fine, but that's not what you're driving at in a major subdivision.
Would it fall under exempt divisions maybe? 3 or 4 and then
That's what I was looking for.
because that's where we have the ag and family, all that, vision all report. That kind of stuff.
That would be 926.
Vision report, 926, somewhere in that area.
Definitely agree there.
All right. More comments on that section of landscape and personal, okay? Clarification. Parking lot buffers for Okay, on page 10. Will that also apply to industrial sites?
Yes.
Or is that, I see now the deed of, that was important. That can be reduced for industrial sites, it looks like.
Right, it addresses the amount of reduction that's possible inside. Section D is developed, correct? And that's a revision saying it can be reduced as much as 50%.
All right, next is. Page 16. Friends, letter I will change. Questions on signage? All right, next is off-street lighting. I do have a question. It says no less than every 6 lots. Given our different lot requirements and different types of subdivisions, that can be drastically different distances. Is there a reason for lot size or lot quantity versus distance?
The general idea of this is to, as you're approaching closer to an adjacent property line, that your lighting isn't as high and isn't as bright. So as you go interior to whatever subdivision it is, you can have higher lighting to reduce the glare on the and the light from being directed into the neighboring property. As far as the per every 6 lots, this language came from the state of South Carolina. And this is one standard that I got out of St. Lucie County, Florida.
So I think as you adopt the lot sizes, it'll change. And this is just my opinion, it'll change. So as you move out to a more rural, larger lot size, do you want more light pollution or less? Or is it a matter of safety concern or not? That would be at the discretion of the council.
So that's kind of a question, because if you, as you move to ag, you would have less light pollution, because your lots and your lot widths are going to be larger. So instead of having one every 300 feet, you might have one every 600 feet.
Yeah, and this is based on lots and not, directional measure. So I know if I'm moving out in the country, I might want to get away from that light pollution out in the country. So every 6 lots then grows larger. But as you get more density, tighter lot spaces, and further into the same municipality, you might have more there for safety, pedestrian traffic, for example, walking through your neighborhood at night. Again, that's just at the discretion of the division of what you see. We just took the best example we could from a local agency.
The main goal of this section was protection of adjacent uses from glare and height of some of the light fixtures. And we're also on the right of ways. Prevent glare on the phone as you're driving along right of ways.
All right. Any more questions on that section? All right, next is on utilities, and that's what letter. Second line of 1A says if feasible, who determines the feasibility?
That would be a question I defer to who drafted the ordinance to begin with. This isn't a new suggestion. This is what's currently in the ordinance.
There's our opportunity to correct it if need be. I'm gonna ask, since we have a local utility representative, I want to ask his opinion. We're on page 18 of this appendix. What's your opinion on the, if feasible, install water sewer? Then we do have if they are within certain parameters, they have to. Who, would your office be determining that feasibility? Would an engineer be determining that feasibility? What's the parameters they would use to determine that?
We would determine the engineering feasibility of it. That might be speaking to the cost feasibility of it, if I had to guess. Because I would say if water and sewer is readily available, that's the direction they're going to choose, because it gives them potential to develop lots. I like the distance, because there is a need to require it at some level, because unfortunately in the past, not recently, but in the past, you have developers come in, cut a gravel road, sell lots off to people, and well, they would just sell them as is, and the people buying them either locally or whatever wouldn't understand how difficult it could be to get a well in our county. And so they come to us and say, I can't get a well. I've hired a well driller, I've tried twice, spent $20,000, I can't get water. And we will tell them where our nearest water line's half a mile down the road. We tried to get the developer to extend water to the property. They refused, because they were trying to get out as cheap as they could get. So I like the distance requirement. We would make the determination on whether or not we could serve on, what it would cost to serve, and then it's in there. Make that investment. Long answer, but there's a couple different parts to it.
I want to suggest that you just take out the if feasible. If there is an issue, then certainly they can ask for variance.
I'm striking that.
Subdivision constructed under our regs, you have water and sewer. So they're gonna get variances on every time they put up something where there's no access to it.
There's provisions if you go down, if you look at like section C, for example, see it in Charlie. It discusses the sewer's not available. They put in a septic system, they have to provide the DHEC documentation to support it. So there are provisions later down. I just think, I agree with the attorney in that matter. If we strike out feasible, that would be a lot of this.
The way I read through this, which got feasible, is required in this parameter footage. It's saying if you're within 1,000 feet of water, you will be required, because it shall be good enough. Shall be required 300 feet of water, 1,000 feet of water, 300 of sewer. It doesn't have feasibility at this point, they're gonna have to do it. And then down here, if they're not within distance of those systems, it becomes their option. And they have to, letter B, they have to get a letter from Orange County Water Sewer saying why they can't service that area.
That just depends on arguing feasibility.
Right. They can't get
A couple of dollars and cents.
Yeah. And this is major. It's going to affect it. Might divide a lot of the three or something like that. I've read it, or I'd like to read it, the clause that requires, if they're gonna do a community sewer, that they must have approval from the provider. Yeah, did not, you not discuss that at a prior meeting? If somebody's gonna do a community sewer that it needs an approval of a provider, it might potentially have to take over one day.
But yeah, there's DHEC state regulations far as the 208 plan, you have authority to sort of look at what type of public sewer is put in an area in the county. I think DHEC is that 208 plan agency for Lawrence County, or the management agency. So we should see that anyway, just to make sure it conforms to what our plans are. Because I'd be quite honest with you, if it's a large enough project and it's out somewhere where you don't have infrastructure nearby, but it makes sense to do a community sewer system, we might choose to get involved and operate that system and not put it on an HOA or someone else. So yes, we would like to have some sort of input along the way on what we want to get in.
It does require a permit to construct from DHEC, so does that mean it's gonna cross your desk at some point?
It should. And DHEC is locally understaffed sometimes, so it doesn't always work out.
Jeff Kennedy had required to bond that also. That if you had to take it over, there would be a source of insurance coverage, so to speak.
I don't know that. That's a great idea, and if we got involved and decided not to participate, we would ask something like that.
But that, what it said is that puts the burden, financial burden on you, whether there's a backup source to cover.
I'll word something for that section. So far, documentation from the sewer provider for that area. Think of something, say it.
We can, section 4 of the private water and sewer systems, we can firm up that language, in the document of repeal replace, we can firm it up, and make it more inclusive of our providers, saying, hey, it's gotta go to their review along with the, that's just a matter of tweaking the language and out, if that's what suits. Because again, right now, it puts all the apples in the cart with DHEC. Like Phil's saying, if they, don't enforce, they won't know, if they're understaffed.
There are only two of you that do sewer outside the municipal limits of the county. Everybody else I don't know of.
We do most of the retail, so usually we're involved. Just to give you an example, we were out on 76 in the hospital 15 years ago. And somebody came along, did a commercial project. There is a DHEC requirement that if you're within so many feet of the sewer line, must tap on it. DHEC signed off on the septic permit, and I called them after the fact. And I said, what happened? Oh, we didn't even know you had sewer out there. They called, check. Nothing. He said, the last time I was in the area was 15, 20 years ago, there wasn't sewer there. Just assumed it was.
Yeah, you want some language to make sure that they're approved by the local sewer provider, because it'll be where they are. For those reasons right there, we can double check, so we don't have that issue in the future. All right, that brings us page 19's into this appendix. Are there any other questions for this appendix? Recommendation, request? All of the above. All right, hearing none. Or do you have a copy of this chapter 19 environment? And 19, 18. Now, is this intended to be a separate appendix as well? Is that the plan?
Yes, this is what we were gonna try to bring to you in the next coming weeks, along with the tree protection ordinance.
Is it going to be something in the subdivision ordinance when we approve that, or is this going to be a whole? entity?
I did mention to you that we're gonna bring it out of the environmental chapter and put it in with the subdivision. In order to do that, it would have to be another appendix. So we've got A, B, C, D, E appendix, so it would be F. And the reason being also that there aren't enough sections, like I tried to fit it in after the subdivision ordinance, or like moving ordinances.
That will not be a problem. We've already talked community code. That's their stop, yeah. We can put in any number of sections we want to. But I think our discussion was this would be a different appendix to the main ordinance. All of the, rather than having standalone ordinances, yeah, appendix 2/926.
So this would either be appendix, I believe, F, yeah, or G.
But I would recommend make it B, bump all the other ones down, because the other ones are just checklists, basically. They're gonna be at the back, so I'm gonna put it between the D.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the appendix 18, what is now 18A, or the environmental
Yeah.
chapter?
Yeah.
Or the tree?
The only one in our packet was chapter 18, environment.
All right,
And 18A, I did not have, the tree one was not included in this package.
right. Actually, the only reason why these were attached were because they were referenced in 926 and appendix A, so that y'all had an idea about what was being talked about. But we weren't, as mentioned earlier, we weren't prepared to go forward and review this much.
If you would like more, if you'd like more time to have staff go through them and then bring it back, that's okay too. That's where we are.
Absolutely, if it's the will of this council, we like to work on all the appendices and put them in order. And so they'll be prepared in file form for what the ordinance we would like is supposed to be.
All right, so we'll go through the checklists. Are there any, or do you want to appendix B, which is minor subdivision development? Any questions, concerns, comments? Mr. Bobo, I know your department's going to be involved heavily in this too. Do you have any questions or comments on any of these? Our appendix C is the neighbor subdivision, which has a few more hoops, has more checks. Any questions on those? Just clarification between C and D, which are going, one's for the code department, basically, and one's for the planning. And also the borough, I think, these are minor, I think.
So we had, as it is now, appendix B as the minor subdivision checklist. And then appendix C is the preliminary plat checklist. Appendix D is a construction site plan checklist. And then appendix E is the final plat checklist.
You can wear that verbiage on the main page. There is no cover sheet for appendix D. Do I have any questions, contents of the appendices?
Okay, now this checklist, get it to the plan.
And for staff, it's got
And,
digitally public available.
I do commend staff for that, because I sat in on some of those meetings where they were coming up with checklists, and it was a lot of discussion, it was thorough, and I think it's gonna be a good tool for us.
I think once this goes online, also that will help the developers see if they even bother to apply. Can it meet the standards? Can it even meet the basic checklist?
does this cause the staff to do any extra work in any of these? The last couple of steps.
Well, yes, ma'am, there's gonna be a more thorough review process that goes along with these checklists, but the idea is it's a curve out a lot of requests for any type of variance or anything, so everybody is theoretically on the same sheet of music. But what's required on the front end and what's going to be reviewed. So once the application is made, everybody can go through this checklist, we're all on the same page and know what is going to be looked at. So it's not an opinion, it's not a personal belief, it's there in black and white, what's being looked for, so everybody's treated fair
cause the staff to do any extra work?
We're gonna have extra work, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It makes sure that everything is squared away, so there's no Swiss cheese, nothing fell through the cracks that we forgot to look at or anything, because now we have a checklist that's gotta be signed off on. So we'll be good to go.
These will also be available on both the planning webpage and the building webpage. They can fill them out online instead of having to print them out and write them online. They can also submit them online and it goes directly to the building department.
Any other questions? All right. You can hit a few of those topics we addressed last meeting. I know you sent us an email, but I doubt any of us got an opportunity to review it this afternoon. Do you ever have that written down as well? A few items we addressed last meeting.
Yes. You'll see that, DuPont, anything new is included this time, but we'll make that change that you suggested.
We're still working off the original that we worked last week.
Okay, on page 12, we changed that language with the definition of variance. To say the planning commission, it did say zoning board of appeals. So. On page 13, we included a statement directing the developer or builder to not only contact the state concerning any historical or cultural resources, but also to contact the county so that we know there's been a stop of work. Page 15. This was a request from our planning commission members that the remaining under exempt divisions, the family division of the remaining parent tract is in compliance with all applicable dimensional requirements and meets the driveway width, spacing of the county's code of ordinances. On the next page, page 16. And then
Back to page 15, I had written a note to add one residence per plat.
I got that.
I'm sorry.
We discussed having one residence per plat or one residence per parcel as a requirement. Get that can put in there.
Okay, we on a family division.
I'm assuming it was under family division because if someone subdivided, they would have to subdivide if they put more than one residence on the same plat. That was right around the family division area where I had that written.
Okay, looks like page 16, under family division, we added, has each new tract and remaining parent tract shall have a maximum density of one dwelling unit per parcel and shall be subdivided to meet the minimum lot size required by DHEC to install septic systems on each new lot for future use.
All right, that was very top of 16, number 1.
All right,
So what you just read was in addition to that. Ms. Roy,
On number 15, where it's in blue,
we don't have it. She just sent it out a second and none of us have that.
where the new wording is, or what Mr. Kerr was talking about. What I'm showing is the new wording is, each new tract and remaining parent tract shall have a maximum density of one dwelling per unit, and it should be subdivided to meet minimum lot requirements required by DHEC to install septic system. DHEC may require something smaller than what our minimum lot size is.
Where are you at? What section and letter are you at?
He's on page 16, under family division, number 1.
Yes, we're comfortable with that for family division.
So it's okay for them to have so this is what one of the problems is they're coming in with smaller lots. And then something comes about later and it doesn't conform to what we have.
Actually, I know he's talking about, I addressed it further down.
This says required by DHEC. It said required by DHEC and minimum standard of county lot size. That would cover both. So if DHEC requires something larger, you can cover both. If DHEC says, well, you can do it smaller, then they would have to at least meet the minimum size of what we have.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sometimes, like, as you well know.
I'll take credit anytime.
Yeah, please
So
do.
what you're telling us is you don't like the DHEC clause.
If our minimum size is, whatever y'all agree to, is that half acre and DHEC says, I just can't get it, I just can't get a system started in this area, you're gonna probably need 3/4 of it. Then the minimum size is not 3/4 of it. If DHEC comes in and says that you got really good soil here, you can do it on 1/4 of an acre. The county requirements are 1/2 an acre, then it has to be minimum of either.
On section 28, or excuse me, on page 28, section 8-611, it describes this. Talks about lot divisions resulting in less than 2 acres. So we can reference that section, provide clarifying language, whatever the case may be. It is above the chart, you see section 8-611. It clarifies this. We had the language says it should be the subdivider's responsibility to consult with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control to determine whether adequate land exists for the future installation of well and septic tank services on lot divisions resulting less than 2 acres. So what we can do is provide referencing information in the subsection we're talking about right now that refers to that section. So that still has that clarification.
That still requires them in that section to conform to our minimum lot widths.
Sure.
The part here is in an exemption clause, basically grants a variance automatically for family divisions. So the question on the table is, as folks I'm sure where, do we want to allow families to be able to subdivide a lot smaller than the 1/2 to 3/4 acre, depending on what their need is?
I think from my perspective, I think that Mr. Roy may be driving too. We don't want DHEC overriding our minimum requirements.
I think some of that language and idea came from Commissioner Smith when he was here last week. And it's not necessarily for new, what he was after was existing tracks, because with the current, we have problems with existing. We can say whatever we want to for new ones anytime we want. But the issue he was having was they've already got 2 houses on the lot. DHEC will permit them, but they're smaller than they're required. So I am definitely comfortable with this. It has language new, each new tract and the remaining parent tract shall have a minimum density. The whole purpose was to help that subdivision, that family who already built a house on it, be able to divide that DHEC permit. But I guess, let me ask this, say my son's got a house, he's 6, but my son and I have an acre. And we're on city water, our own Orange County Water Sewer, we're on the septic system. We got 2 water hookups, we got 2 septic tanks. To divide that up, at best, we get half acre each, or indeed quarter acre, 3/4 of an acre, but the requirement for that type of subdivision right now is 3/4 of an acre. So how would I divide that property if I wanted to divide that property? If minimum 3/4. So you're not going to divide that property, so you're telling me?
No, according to what's in, no. Want to make that exception. That's fine.
You'd require variances, but we have to come with variances, that's exactly how that play out.
But what you're doing on variances, is that gonna become a hardship? That's not a hardship. We made the definition of variance so stringent now, that you're gonna have to come to us with very, very hardship of something in order to get it. Like streetlights, we all mentioned streetlights in large subdivisions. Developer comes to us and says, you know, these are 3 acre lots. And we really don't want to put streetlights up there. Is that a hardship? That's not a hardship. So you can't carry a variance and do it. You know what I'm saying?
If suppose I have an acre of land somewhere, I don't have anything on it, and I have 2 children, and I want them to divide it. There's nothing is on it, haven't had anything on it. Now, all of a sudden, they can divide, they want to divide it in half, but they're unable to do that. Because a portion of it would make it so, they couldn't work on a half each, so it would be the 3/4. So you,
The difference is gonna be from what Mr. Patterson is saying is those are existing structures, so you're penalizing someone who built something maybe 10 years ago.
And I think it's important to realize where we got this data point from. We got it from Kershaw County, and they went through a similar process. And I'll read you, I know Lisa expressed this last week, I'll read it again. Local DHEC officials stated that a good rule of thumb for Kershaw County at the time, that DHEC required setbacks are applied as 30,000 square foot lot, approximately 0.67 of an acre. Would be the smallest lot a well and septic tank should be on, and 20,000 square foot, approximately 0.46 of an acre, the smallest lot a septic tank with public water should be on. However, it was recognized that in some cases DHEC was allowing smaller lot sizes depending on the result of soil tests. Their planning commission, as a result, decided to set the minimum size for a lot with a well and septic tank at 3/4 of an acre, and the minimum size for a lot with public water and septic tank at half an acre. So that's where they arrived at their definition of this at, and that's what we plug and play into this case.
Would it be possible to get a clause in here under family division, only family division, not anything else, not my buddy John, only? And it says immediate family, as defined as grandparent, parent, step-parent, sibling, child, stepchild, child, grandchild, immediate family. Could we get an exemption clause in here for existing dwellings to be subdivided? They must meet DA. So that way, anything new, like when my son grows up and I wanted to give him a lot, it has to meet the requirements. But if it happened 30 years ago, it can be subdivided as long as both properties meet DA. Is that amicable?
Well, yeah, that's fair, but you're grandfathering in something that's already been built, then you want to give it to a family member, and then you come in and say, well, you don't meet the minimum lot size. Well, there wasn't one when it was constructed, so yeah, you're going to have some exceptions there. And, I think that would be a hardship, that, in a sense, to say you can't split this property up because you can't meet our minimum lot size. But if you meet the DHEC regs, then I think you're okay.
And that's the sheer matter of definition.
Yes.
And then make that applicable to the subsection.
Let's do that. Let's change that language for the DHEC. So we can delete the blue writing on I-1
Okay.
and create a new I-6.
I still have some issues there, only because over the period of time, just like anything, the land changes. Somebody might have moved a little bit closer to where your property is. And I really think to hold a gun over somebody's head, literally just because I made some changes here, some changes have been made in this community, just because you were here first, you know, shouldn't be that much of an issue. I understand to the point where, you know, we are supposed to be community, but over a period of time, you know, something changes, and I really would, 30 years from now, I wouldn't want to have to tell somebody, you know, based on something we did 30 years ago, to hold the county, because technically, it has been said that one, council can't promote something that another council has to put up with. They can turn around and change it. So I'm just saying, you know, you handcuffing, some neighboring people in your community based on something that's happening today.
But you are differentiating new versus existing.
I understand that, but still that doesn't relate to any changes that have happened all around. When we making this ordinance right now, in 2022, and Brown have this property, I'm just gonna use us, and he has an acre of land, and yet I have, you know, an acre of land on the other side of him, and I hadn't done anything with it, but all of a sudden I do something with it within that 30-year period before he decided to make a variance on his land and divide it in half. And some other things also happened in the whole neighborhood, but,
If you have that crystal ball, Ms. Anderson, help people
I
out.
don't have one,
I
and
don't think that-
I don't believe in it. I'm just saying changes take place whether we want to or not. That's just like, you know, so that's what I'm relating to, change.
And I think somebody tried to develop their own crystal ball, but put it in the lap we had, saying this is what, you know, we're not gonna legislate, regulate it here right now, because we don't know what's gonna happen in the future, so we're gonna rely on their standards and let them drive that conversation going forward, so, but, you know, it's really just what y'all wanna do on it, if you wanna make it an exception, or you wanna, how would you like it addressed in your ordinance?
I'm even lost about where we went on this conversation. Seriously,
I think Ms. Anderson's concern is if you had adjacent property that she's worried that changes are gonna happen to property A and property B shouldn't be allowed to divide it because of what happened to property A. Did I hit that right?
Kind of,
but we're discussing specifically family division, right?
yeah.
So there is a delineation between what we're talking about. If this property over here is not trying to get a family division, they can and will be treated different from this person here who's got his property that's doing a family division. It's a carve out. So
You're absolutely correct, and that's why it's important to go back to the definition, like the chairman suggested, of what is family and what would be the requirements of this provision. So I think as long as we define that, that would alleviate a lot of the confusion.
I could do the same thing on my property. And somewhere along the line, somebody might have to get knocked out only because of what one or the other did. But both of us think we're not being treated fairly.
It's already defined as you go down.
Okay.
I think if you look at number 3, but we still need to put it in the main definition.
Okay. We can look at some more things and make it.
So if you want that language, please, and make it I-6 and Councilman Rutherford. All right,
Clarify one thing.
yes, ma'am. Yes, sir, sorry. Call her.
And I might have missed it. If I did, sorry about that. The issue that Mr. Smith brought up last time, which was putting more than one residence on a parcel and then coming back and trying to split it. Was that interest? when that one parcel doesn't meet the two residents.
Yeah,
Does that make
it's,
sense?
section back over here, on page 15 somewhere. All right, I'm sorry, it's the piece that he referenced earlier. 8-611. It's on into it. Says. That's
So 27, that's where E, and the A.
Thomas, which one do you reference? We have in here where it has to be one.
I'm on the hunt there.
Okay, all right. Oh, yes, we have that.
Where I wrote that down was under, like page old, what we have, page 15, around exempt divisions.
That's where A was changed to where you want to put the definition of family and land.
No, we're talking about something.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a lot. So many times.
When you find it, you can check it out.
Absolutely.
Well, and in that family division, they do have it already on page 16.
Yes.
And number 3, they do have what the immediate family is. You already defined it.
Yes.
Crown looking for 8-611.
No, I was, but that's not what I was thinking. And we're looking, so what's an I-1 says each new tract, and the remaining parent tract shall have maximum density of 1 unit per parcel. And like what I'm thinking about, we want there to be a reference in here that only one house per parcel is allowed. I thought I read it.
It does say at the top 16, each tract, and parent tract shall have a maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per parcel.
That's under, family exemption.
It's under, yeah.
But right now, anybody's got a house in the rural mobile home up in the backyard. If they wanted to.
So think on the old 8-569 exempt divisions, it says with exception to the family division allowance, a parent tract may be subdivided into additional tracts provided that the tracts created and the parent tract are in compliance with our requirements. So I think we want to add in there and that there's only 1 residence per plat.
I think that's a good place to have it. We'll make that one.
Okay.
For plat of land.
Yes. Whatever the language.
Chuck, will that give you language, he's got to pull a mobile home in behind their house? Where does that need to reside for you to be able to enforce that? Because they have to come to you for a mobile home permit, correct?
Yeah.
Or even to build a house.
Would we need it maybe under general requirement for
But you move a mobile home in, it's a residence.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and they could, I say mobile home, that's what we tend to deal with, but you could physically build a house on the same lot. But we only want to require 1 dwelling per parcel. Permanent dwelling. Recognizing the residents and go out.
Residential dwelling.
Yes, whatever, recognizing that some folks have living lost weeks in their barns and full houses with other lost weeks, I mean, it exists. We wouldn't want to enter that, just make it permanent.
Under the family division, it kind of already clarifies that, talking about what the division, but we could need to.
But we're assuming
Based on
maybe
your
it won't-
suggestion.
it's not a family division at this point, it just could be a division,
We
and
need to clarify that.
if you're gonna create 2 dwellings on one parcel, that needs to be subdivided into 2 parcels, and you have 1 dwelling per. And then that's where you would get into the problem with, well, it's too small to do that or whatever, and then you say, well, then it can't be approved. That's what happened, yeah.
Just quick, how does that work if someone has, like a building for a rental, VRBO, like on the lake, they have a big piece of property, they rent out all the time, but it's on one land, one parcel.
So they have a house and then they have a.
Then they have a smaller house that they rent out.
Which I think is why we need to clarify permanent residence.
So that wouldn't be considered permanent, even though it's a dwelling, it's not the same person all the time. Okay.
So we can work that back in here, that would be fantastic. In this appropriate area.
You want to define it as occupied dwelling, or I guess we're searching for the correct definition there,
Residential,
residential.
because I guess a structure wouldn't be a good, because that could be anything,
Yeah,
but,
a shed or-
yeah, a residential dwelling.
It's not our 21,000 square foot black oak system. 21,000 square foot subdivision. Black oak is what we're talking about, because we're not talking about subdivisions, like. Family members, this is 21,000 square foot come to play on this.
Yeah. Subdividing a property. So it fall into the same, that, which I'm assuming we're gonna get to in a second. They fall into that table. Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to read our definition of dwelling unit. Finds building, a portion of building design used as an independent living facility for a single household that includes permanent provisions for the
Still brings up a great point. Whether it's an Airbnb or a guest house or something along those lines.
And yes, that would need to be considered a dwelling if you have things set up other than it's a barn that they bring their own water in a bucket. If it has facilities, and it's tapped on the water and it has some kind of septic or something, it's a resident. If they're renting it out as.
We're just calling it residential dwelling.
All right. What's the next thing on there?
Page 19, referring to the traffic impacts analysis. Y'all have asked that we include that the analysis include the nearest intersections to the project site that will be impacted by the proposed project.
Number 3.
Because we thought that the half mile may not address intersections that would be impacted because they might be just past.
Read that language for us one more time.
Section 3 for the bottom, it just adds, and the nearest intersection or intersections to the project site that will be impacted by the proposed project. So it still maintains that half mile radius.
Who will determine, but then it does say that will be impacted. Who's going to make the determination on the impacted intersections?
Yeah, that would prevent,
That would primarily fall on the responsibility of their engineers and everything. I mean, we put the requirements in here, they're the ones that should be specified on what impact.
So if they bring that to you and you don't feel that it is included in the intersection, y'all can send it back to them.
Sure, we can take that review and say, hey, what about this, about this? You know, it's part of working together, but primarily a lot of this, you know, their engineer.
and the next page, 20, look at the language of industrial for industrial development and industrial project under public noticing. Page 21 also took out for industrial subdivision. And it now reads for a major residential or commercial subdivision project.
On the bottom of 20, I had written something, Councilman Rankin had suggested or wanted a 24-month time on the time must remain.
That's on the next page, if you look at section 8-586, that's added in there, so the sign must remain in place for a period of 24 months from the time the project has received final approval.
The next page is 23 under variance requests. Legal language that we actually had under a different section that was required here, so just duplicated here. Page 26, the surety bond is approved by the county attorney. Not planning commission.
Going back up to that one on 23. And I'm reading what you have in blue. It says appeal of variance of the circuit court or any request for pre-litigation mediation must be filed with the circuit court within 30 days after actual notice of the decision of the planning commission. Have we not discussed bringing it to council first before going to circuit court?
No, I have.
Yes.
Yeah, that word is back
Yeah,
up.
I made the change in my draft that apparently didn't get picked up.
Well, I think the thing should backwards. I don't know if it's intentional, but let's make sure we double check that word.
I think y'all said go back and look at
It's-
page.
it's-
I think they
if
did it on
the-
page
If
36.
they're not happy with the variance or the action of the planning commission, they appeal to the council within 30 days of the decision. And then the council, they're still not satisfied with the council's decision, they have 30 days to appeal it. So
Yeah, I made notes to
Or
reference
is that
page
strict?
36 and
Okay.
37.
The way it shows up on my phone, it doesn't show you're stricken.
Yeah.
So that's why it's duplicated.
Yeah.
Okay. So your language actually starts with the word person agreed.
That's correct.
Okay. Right. Yeah, it's not showing stricken. I apologize.
Page. Yes, 26 is just to clarify that the surety bond is approved by the county attorney. And that the planning commission or county attorney determines that the requirements, standards, and specifications of this chapter applicable to the construction, installation, and completion of such improvements have not been met, and et cetera, et cetera. And then on page 27, under maintenance and maintenance bond, planning commission was stricken, and attorney was added, was replaced with the word attorney, and that's throughout that paragraph where planning commission was mentioned. Page 28. In the first sentence, there is section 8-611 shall be the subdivider's responsibility to consult with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control to determine whether adequate land exists for the future installation of well and septic tank services on lot divisions resulting in less than 2 acres. It's, we didn't actually have language like this before, and it's kind of reiterating and ensuring that the subdivider knows that if he goes ahead and he subdivides these lots, that just small lots, that he's gonna have to contact DHEC to see if it's gonna be sufficient for septic tanks. And now we have the table, conventional single-family detached subdivisions.
Before you get started, you added minimum open space in here. I do not believe that should be in this table. That'd be an open space table.
Okay.
And are we requiring the city department by that impervious surface? Is that part of the standard subdivisions? Or is that for open space?
Yes, currently we've got, for conventional single family, we've got 25% open space required. We were looking at changing the size of the lots. That would usually require, the lots are getting larger, that would usually require more open space. If you want that stricken, it can, but the maximum impervious surface is what we are adding in and relying on in controlling this.
You would give us a little more background information, right? You don't.
Okay, on the. Okay, the impervious surface, unless it's, the exception of concrete, because there is some impervious concrete. Impervious surfaces include the rooftops, concrete, asphalt, anything where stormwater or rainwater is not immediately or quickly absorbed into the ground. So you have runoff, and that creates obviously more flooding and more stormwater issues as far as trying to control it on the site. When you control the maximum impervious surface, what you're saying is you could take a portion of whatever the development site is and say this portion can only, this lot can only be covered by so much impervious surface. Meaning it can only be covered by dwelling units, infrastructure, usually you say rooftops. So anything that's a hard surface that does not absorb the stormwater. So that in itself controls your density. If you're only allowed to have that on 50% of the lot. And then you also have your open space that is required. That also helps to draw these parameters as to how the development is built.
This table 10 is for just a standard subdivision then.
Right,
So the open space shouldn't even be referenced in table 10. You get table 12.
no, we require open space with conventional too. It's 25%.
Oh,
That's why it's not in red or,
these are your current requirements. Not on this table 10 that we had last week. Those here from last week to this. Definitely not a 910.
it is in that.
It's not in a table currently, it's in a definition of the current. We'll see if we can find it.
And you're finding that in there.
Definitions on page 9.
You remember, we have the requirement space, but it is in the section 7.5 open space residential development. It's not in the regular one. Not being correct. Section 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 address lots of public, the different water types. When you get to 7.5, we address open space, and that's where you have that 25% you're referencing. That is not in the regular subdivision requirements, in our current ordinance.
Okay, so under conventional subdivision, we'll just scratch the open space requirements.
So let me clarify. So if the developer comes in, how will they delineate whether they're going to build off conventional standards or open space standards? From this, what we're looking at, this table, is that for non-developer created things, just individuals building on individual lots?
Now, this would be for large development.
So there, if they went along with this, they wouldn't have to have any minimal open space or anything. This would let them come in and develop however they want with no regard to open space.
So what's the difference between a open space subdivision and a regular one then?
The open space development is allowing for smaller lots in exchange for more open space. And they have more freedom in design in the smaller lots. They're also allowed to do mixed residential use to where they can do single family detached along with single family attached. For conventional, you cannot do that. But now if we take out this open space requirement on the conventional development, and I've got no reason.
Asphalt the entire acre if you wanted to.
No, we're talking about leaving the impervious surface requirement. We're only talking about the open space requirement.
Or we're not. The type seems to be confusing. Whereas before we had a section that says this is what individuals do, subdivide lots. Subdivide a lot. Then if you want to get into minor subdivisions, major subdivisions, those are different sections. This section here used to be under Mr. Jones wants to take 2 acres, make it into 2 1-acre lots. That had nothing to do with impervious surfaces or open space or anything else. He just had to meet the square footage requirements, setback requirements. That's all I did. But in that, now we've kind of included that table in with all this other stuff. To me, it's just confusing.
Are you referring to the open space residential development?
No, I'm referring to this division 10.
Table 10? Or conventional?
Division 10, what it's called, general standards for conventional single-family subdivisions. I think when you put subdivisions at the end, everybody's saying this is a subdivision. Do we not just want a section that says these are the general dimensions of a lot for the general public? And if you want to develop and wants to come in and make a subdivision, then you go to minor, major, or open space. Now, if you want to refer back to these other ones, okay, fine. Plus these other items. You start combining the two, I think you're causing a lot of confusion.
Yeah, if somebody wants to come in and build a home, they can just come in and build a home, just come in and get a permit for it. If it's gonna be a large development that involves a subdivision, then you have this. This isn't for your average person that walks on the street, buys a lot, and is pulling the permits themselves to build a house.
But he's asking if he owns 5 acres and he wants to divide that in half where the requirements are.
That's 5 acre, you'd be under minor subdivisions.
Divided in half.
Yes.
There you go.
So.
I agree. I agree.
It seems a little strict for,
So I guess at no point in any discussion do I recollect when we're talking about general subdivisions, meaning a house beside a house beside a house, have we ever discussed open space?
We've already agreed to take it off the table.
But it'll still be applicable to the developer when they go to build the subdivision.
Every single subdivision required open space. We can have that discussion, we just have never had it.
No. Not making every subdivision considered an open space. I think that's where I'm getting wrapped around the axle is we have conventional construction and open space development. There's 2 different animals. Primarily, if we put these restrictions on square footage, they're not going to opt for conventional development like that because of the size constraint. They would go toward the open space, correct?
Well, if they can build a large subdivision with larger lots without any open space, meaning they get more lots, because they don't have any open space requirements. Plus, all you have are lots.
Currently today, when someone has, obviously there's a moratorium, but prior to this, we have some people that have built, did they have a requirement for open space, even though? Conventional.
Is a suggestion to take out the alternative of having an open space subdivision. We say we take it completely off the table and it will not exist in the ordinance.
In the conventional section.
Because again, if we keep going back to what we currently have, this is moving forward, this is where it's still in place. So if the scope of what you're looking for in ordinance form is to have open space requirements within a conventional development, then that's the direction we need to go. If you feel that's tackled in open space, that's the direction you need to go. But I think looking back, what we currently have is kind of a big point at this juncture.
So you probably haven't seen it either, unless you have this afternoon. The updated version of this has an extra line in this table 10 that did not exist last week. It says open space.
Oh, yeah,
You just wanted out in that table.
that's fine, but that was added, because I thought you had wanted me, I have actually a note that says add impervious surface and open space requirements. Now, I don't know if you said add impervious surface to the open space development requirements, or, so I just added both in all the tables.
Yeah, no. Commission. I'm okay with impervious surface. Is that something you consider in that?
Yeah, open space is already struck, if you got a line to it, we're good to go.
All right.
Anything else on that table?
Let's go to that.
Oh, I did have one question. As far as that second column there, would it make sense to bring that up to 3/4 of an acre? Because you have,
I intend to make a motion to change it. That's what it is.
like that,
Yes, 32,670.
okay, because we kept it at 25,000 last week.
That was the half, and that's what I wanna know after you don't finish. Since you knocked out the line that we do not see. We had two changes that was in the table under lots area, so are you making changes? Or do you wanna change those back, or what are you doing back for those?
Leave currently as a state after first reading approval. It's 4 acre. Lots of water sewer.
You got a quarter acre, I thought we said a half
It's
acre.
half,
Okay, all right,
half acre
okay,
water sewer.
all right. Now, what we got?
3/4 of an acre water septic,
Okay,
and a full acre well septic.
So 3/4 is okay for that middle?
But that's what we have, but I was making, the council's already voted on that. I will make a motion at the next council meeting. Or, I'm sorry. The next time this comes up, which will be the next council meeting. I'll make a motion at that point in time to vote to change that.
To what number?
25,000, because that's what we had that step and deal last time, that there's been no issue with that column.
I thought you had asked me to hold on to that 25,000.
No, council voted on 3/4, I should leave it there. I'll make a formal motion at the appropriate time. It will be changed, hopefully. But that's a discussion with Dale about the different types and the issues and what comes, and we haven't had issues out of that one, so I see no reason to change it, just like we're not changing the other one.
okay, let me get an understanding. We've already voted on 3/4 of the acres of this one, so that's why we're not addressing it right now.
We're gonna address it.
You're gonna address that next time. Okay, but did we change? Did we change the 1/2 acre? Did we change it? Why not?
It's still what happened.
Or was it a 1/2?
The open spaces, it originally was 8,000, so that's less than 1/4, and we doubled that.
Okay.
But
I don't think so. That's why I'm trying to get our reasoning for not changing that.
because all takes won't go.
Okay, because you want, okay. Gotcha. So those are the only two changes that we had, that we made in it, that we want to stay as it is. Right now.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And no open space.
Page 31,
Not in that.
Okay, I'm just gonna, that's only I can go back and, what the changes were, I had to write it down myself, so I see.
on page 31. We changed it to general standards for multiple family residential development. You asked me to strike through regardless of whether a parcel is subdivided or not under the standards for multiple family development. And it's stricken, and it now reads pertains to all multiple family development within an unincorporated areas of Washington. Page 32. Section 8-617 at the top of 32. Down. what I was gonna ask you all on as far as the recommendation goes. All proposed multiple family development, I had added in there, consisting of greater than 15 dwelling units must be served by public water and sewer utilities. This came up because previously I had it limited to where all multiple family development was required public water and sewer utilities. And Ms. Anderson had made a comment about that not being fair to smaller development. If somebody just wanted to put a couple of units on a smaller lot. So I threw in a recommendation of something, anything greater than 15 dwelling units would be required for a multiple family development.
Okay. So somebody wanted 30, they could just do 2 lots. And have septic on each one. Is that what that plot?
They were 2 separate parcels adjacent to each other.
The impervious surface requirement in table 11. Walk us through this table. So you change the minimum site area to an acre. So in that acre, you can only have 1 6-unit dwelling. Is that what I'm reading?
No, the 6 units is the maximum number of units you can have together, attached.
Okay.
We don't actually have density down because we're basing it on the.
So this says a minimum site, so you have to have at least an acre to put that on there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, this pertains to the tables that I had sent to y'all that mentioned and went through all the computations of each one of them to see how they worked out as far as the density that they claimed, along with the minimum lot number and the maximum impervious surface and the minimum open space that they have. And I came down to where in looking at 7 different counties, I found 2 that were probably the closest in actuality as far as computing it all out to be accurate. So I used those 2, is Dorchester and Greenwood County, and also Greenville County wasn't too bad on that. So I went along with theirs, and their lots were anywhere from half an acre, actually it was less than a half an acre, up to 2 acres. So just did the happy medium. Figured it's easier to figure it out from an acre than it is.
Just to clarify, how many townhomes can I put on?
On the acre, it would determine, well, you have to take 50%.
Okay.
Pretty max impervious. I think the example I sent y'all was 2 acres. So you would have to take 50% for the impervious surface coverage, so that would be.
Let me ask a better question, actually. So if I'm doing a duplex, one duplex, that's 2 units. I must own an acre to do that.
Yes. I know townhomes, it's a minimum of 3. And then as a group, it's 6, the most as a group.
No, I'm talking about 1 duplex.
Yeah, it would be correct, it would be. One half acre, yeah, it would be an acre.
And we can change that, that's just the starting point for discussion.
As I sent you, it's like 10,000 square feet to 2 acres is what it ran. It's good.
Does the open space, impervious will include the entire lot, not just building area, correct?
Impervious, the impervious space would be the square footage or acreage that you're permitted to build on solid surface, or solid surface.
When it's over the total lot size, it does not, because we're doing open space requirements. The open space counts towards the non-impervious, correct?
Yes, it'd be 30% natural and 10% common. So you would have, if you're looking at what's not being touched, it would be 50% from the total, the acreage. And then 30% from your total acreage. And the minimum interior lot area that came from figuring the 24-foot width times 100, we were aiming for 100, 110.
I'm worried about being too restrictive for smaller individuals. Well, we might see some subdivisions that, like when I say subdivision, major ones. Will we have more in this county or folks that are gonna build 2 or 3 duplexes on property? I'm trying to, in my head, make sure these percentages aren't gonna restrict them too much. Because the big guys don't have a problem with making sure they can do that in space, so that's not a concern, them, they'll do what they have to do to meet those numbers, or they'll build. I just want to make sure.
It is really gonna change. Square foot, that's it. You with the change?
That was the same. That's fine.
What about the front yard?
Unless it's in the it's in.
I don't have that, that's why I'm asking.
Nothing's changed since over last week.
Okay.
So your interior lot width.
Except the interior lot, that change. I have a circle around it already that we had from last time.
Right.
So I went back there from that.
The rest of the chart.
That's
Pretty much.
everything, okay.
We might come back to that at the next meeting.
Let's see. Okay, page 34. We needed a statement showing that the open space was under the maintenance and responsibility of the homeowners association with the developer. And I think that is, yes, put on the final plat, a statement on the final plat. Excuse me. And y'all had asked me to change this one to the all proposed open space residential development must be served by public water and sewer. This is where I changed it and said or septic tank utilities. And then.
Why did we change that to septic there?
I'm sorry.
So for, you're referring to 623 there, I believe.
Yes, sir.
So we discussed a minimum parcel size at one point, 25 acres. Now, granted, you've added a table that is drawing that down and has other options. building an open space subdivision. Homes clustered in certain areas. I would prefer water and sewer only on that. That's not deal with groundwater issues down the road with Allen septic systems. Is there a reason that we think we might need septic there?
I just remember that you all had asked me to, asked me why it was only forbidding public water and sewer. And then it should be changed to offer other options. And I did not include the community.
I don't think subdivision of that style should allow for septic. That's my personal opinion. The other counties allow septic in these types of subdivisions.
I think some of them have contingencies as far as whether they have it or not. But I think there was only out of about 7 counties, I think there was only 1 or 2 that did it, and one restricted it to public water and sewer only. And then the others, there was another one that required at least public water. But we were the only ones that, in our ordinance, that made inventory.
You see a scenario where open space subdivision might desire
I think
let's be
this-
honest, it's gonna take a half acre to perk anyways, I mean. Lot size is probably next,
that's what I was gonna say. I would be careful with it. I would be really cautious with it because one of the things that we're in here, so this type of development is primarily for those lands that are restricted by environmental constraints, whether it's wetlands or riparian areas.
let's take that back out there.
Or in granite, rock. So if there's a lot that is restricted by it and that limits the amount of space, if somebody just to use that lot only wanted to put 3 or 4 homes on it, as far as putting septic tanks in, once again, that would be a the perk test in that situation. But I would be concerned about allowing too many homes and too much density with under septic.
And we don't want to adjust this.
Okay, so go back to what it was before. Okay, and then 8-625, a mix of single-family detached and single-family attached housing types are permitted within an open space development, provided that the attached single-family housing types are located and grouped together according to the type and lot size. And the single-family attached dwelling units do not exceed 30% of the total housing units within the project. Any attached single-family unit must be a townhouse and excludes condominiums. Something I'm proposing and recommending because mixed residential is something that falls under this type of development. We do not have any standards for mixed residential right now to really allow for it, and we've had development come in with mixed residential and we could apply our standards to it. Because of the minimum lot size. It was a pretty nice development too, when we recently got in, but they couldn't meet minimum lot size, with lot widths. For it to be an open space development, it typically requires anywhere from 40 to 65% open space. Now, if you look at these two categories, these two columns here, you could really only choose, if you wanted to, just choose one.
7,000's gotta go. 7,000 square feet. The minimum we've approved so far is 10,890 quarter acre. So the 3,000, which you may be struck, like I said, I'm not sure what struck was not. But the 7,000 is still in there under the 10 acre one.
Yes. But this is, here's where the problem lies, now you're talking only 50-foot width.
Does
So,
any council member have a desire to go under a quarter acre for any lots in this subdivision ordinance?
no, this is for, this is for the open space.
Does that matter? This is subdivision. And unless somebody wants to speak up, to the best of my knowledge, no council member has any desire to go below a quarter acre for any lot development in the subdivision. Any subdivision. Mr. President, anybody? Obviously, the multifamily may be slightly different, but they're individual lots. But as far as homes, the quarter acre is the minimum desire of this case.
So, take out that whole column, the entire column.
When it says 10 acres,
Yes.
yeah, because then it just mirrors 25 acres.
Exactly, that's, I left them in there before you all choose.
Do we want to, I'm not opposed to, open space on the 10 acre lot necessarily. You don't go and get four houses or so.
Just if she changed it from 7,000 to 10,890, 10.
We just need one column.
Yeah.
What, does anybody have input on a minimum acreage for, open space subdivision?
I sent that to you. This is.
I'm just a council.
Repeat that again, please.
So if somebody wanted to build an open space subdivision, so they want to come in and they, according to this table, 40% of it green space and the rest of it houses. Right now we have, it's showing a minimum acreage requirement to do that. So what do we want to set that minimum acreage at? So basically what we're saying is if you want to build a subdivision, you have to at least develop X amount of acres.
Right now, you want to use 10.
That's
That's what you're saying?
That's what's in the column. Yes. I'm good with 10. Like I don't know that I have a. I mean, the bigger the better, but at the same time, I think there was a nice 10 acre spot. Somebody wanted to make a recreational subdivision, green open space, and a few houses. I don't necessarily know we need to restrict them from doing that.
Are you gonna change the 7,000?
Yes, certainly correct. So we'll make 10. Consensus is 10 acres. % green space is that, because we were at 30. 10% on required green space, anybody have, I don't have a problem with that. We're good with 40%. 10 acre minimum. I think I got verbiage on septic tank, if we're gonna allow that in these.
Okay.
Stay with 50 feet long, that's not gonna happen. 30 in the, cul-de-sac. Otherwise, that one's good.
Okay, so we repeat. We've got minimum site of 10 acres. Minimum lot of 10,890.
Correct.
Minimum lot width of 50 feet.
That's what we had said. The 30 would be for 7,000 square feet.
And then our setbacks are okay.
I believe so, and that's what we had previously said.
Okay. And also on the previous page, under 623, take out where they're allowed septic utilities that they can only be conformed with public water and sewer, correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Clarify something. So on the, minimum open space, it was 25, y'all changed it to 30 in the past, and now it's going to 40, is that correct?
The percentage, yes, that's correct. Any input on that?
Yes.
I think it's too high. Okay, 40%, that's what we said, 40% of subdivision is not. They're having trouble now, being 25. Okay. You know, as far as common space too. They pulling teeth, you know, to get 10% of the total acres. Only 40.
30% natural, 10% common. When it's open space, and that's what an open space is, it's designed to be.
I understand. That's the question.
I
I think it's fine.
I understand that the developer might not like it, but that's not necessarily private piece.
Well, that's one.
I think it's the end of that section.
I think that's it. So that's section.
Make the clear changes in those. Oh, I'm sorry, that was, construction board of building. All right. Do those, so. What other amendments does the staff still work on that we need to review? We got a tree, what do we got the environment, like, I know these here, what in the.
Correct, yeah, the environment, that chapter 18A, which is appendix. The tree protection ordinance, the RV ordinance, RV park ordinance.
We can move on.
That's it.
RV.
Yeah.
We're not, we've already done RV. We shouldn't be looking at RV. That doesn't have anything to do with this subdivision.
No, we have doing the manufactured home right now, updating that.
All right, so.
I think that's it.
Calendar. And we intend to have second reading on the 13th as scheduled. However, I believe we need to have one more review of those appendices prior to that. How does Tuesday the 6th look for everybody? Tuesday the 6th. Tuesday. All right, so September 6th, 5:30, we'll have another meeting to review the appendices we have not yet reviewed. Well, that's, I know y'all are still working on it, but y'all please get those done by next Thursday at the absolute latest for publication.
The appendices or
Yes,
all the draft ordinances?
the appendices.
Okay, but there's.
The only draft ordinance I'm concerned with is related to this ordinance, is the mobile home, and you will have until October 11th to get that together. So, right, so the plan today, second reading's already been postponed twice, it's gonna happen on September 13th. September 6th at 5:30, we're gonna finish the appendices. I would also ask about the first, you have, everybody's had time to go through the discuss changes on the rest of the ordinance that we've already reviewed. Not asking, so all the stuff that's in blue that you just sent out, I'd ask that be in red, because those are changes that not all the council has seen. And then everything that's in red that we've already reviewed can go black. But any other changes that have been made, including ones last Thursday, can be in red. And we will preliminary plan the third reading on the 11th of October. We will also we will hold a public hearing. Are we, Sandy, help me out with the verbiage here. We've already had our official public hearing. We can have a posted public comment, how that may work. Published.
Probably just the public notice or comments.
We will have a dedicated public comment for this ordinance on the 27th. It will be posted as we would any other. We've already had our official public hearings, so we won't do another one of those. But we will have a posted official public comment specifically for 9/26 on September 27th. Be in between second and third reading. And that's plenty of time for the paper.
Well, you don't need 15 days.
Okay.
Required.
All right. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? September 6th, 5:30, we're gonna finish reviewing the appendices. And we can, if there's something else anybody cares to address in the entirety, it can be addressed that way, of course. All right. Anything else? Then I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Carroll, second by Mr. Rain, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed?